Welcome. You know that feeling? That sense of dread where every little sound makes you jump? Today, we're going to explore a story captured in 4 ancient characters that perfectly describes that feeling. It's a story about how our own minds can sometimes become our greatest foe. Right. And these 4 characters you're seeing on the screen, they make up an idiom that comes from a real and really dramatic battle that took place over 1600 years ago in ancient China. The story behind them is just as powerful as the feeling itself. But before we dive into the heat of that battle, let's just pause for a moment and get to know these characters. We're going to peel back the layers one by one to really understand the poetry that's held inside them. Okay, so this first character is Feng, and this represents the wind. You know, just a natural, often harmless force, like a whisper in the leaves. Next up, we have Sheng. This character is what gives voice to the wind. It's the sound it makes, a rustle, maybe a howl. It's the voice of the wind itself. Now for the third character, He. This is the crane, a really beautiful, graceful bird, known for its elegance and for its very distinctive call. And finally, we have Li. And this is that distinct, almost haunting cry of the crane we just mentioned. So, when we put them all together, Feng Sheng He Li, we get this really powerful image, the sound of the wind and the cry of cranes. But the idiom, it means so much more. It describes a mind so completely consumed by fear that it starts mistaking these innocent, natural sounds for an advancing enemy. It's that feeling of being jumpy, paranoid, and seeing danger around every single corner. Now, let's travel back in time to discover the story behind this powerful feeling. I want you to picture a battlefield in ancient China. The year is 383 AD. 2 armies, just vastly different in size and in spirit, are about to have a clash that will change history. So on one side, you have the colossal army of the former Qin. We're talking nearly 1,000,000 soldiers strong. Their banners were so numerous they said it seemed to block out the sun. And facing them, a much, much smaller force from the Eastern Jin, only about 80,000 soldiers, but they were determined, fighting to defend their homeland. The leader of that massive Qin army, Emperor Fu Jian, was just completely consumed by arrogance. He was so confident in his numbers, he famously boasted that if his men just threw their whips into the river, they would actually stop its flow. For him, victory wasn't just likely, it was a foregone conclusion. But the commanders of the smaller Jin army, they weren't just soldiers. They were master strategists. They knew they couldn't win with brute force, so they decided to fight a different kind of war, a war of the mind. They came up with this incredibly cunning plan to turn Fu Jian's greatest strength, his own arrogance, into his fatal weakness. And the plan? It worked perfectly. Absolute chaos erupted. As that massive Qin army collapsed and its soldiers fled for their lives, a whole new enemy emerged, not on the battlefield, but inside their own heads. Their terror just reached a fever pitch. So imagine you're one of those fleeing soldiers. On this desperate retreat, your nerves are completely frayed. Every single sound becomes a threat. And this is where the first part of our idiom appears. The sound of the wind, feng sheng, rustling through the trees. Well, it was no longer just the wind. To them, it was the sound of the enemy closing in. And then, the cry of cranes, He Li, that they heard in the distance was mistaken for the battle cries of the pursuing Jin army. This is the exact moment Feng Sheng He Li was born. Their own fear had become the enemy, and it was absolutely everywhere. They had lost the war, not on the battlefield, but in the landscape of their own minds. So, what can this story of ancient panic really teach us today? It's so much more than just a piece of military history. It's a really profound and timeless lesson about the destructive power of unchecked fear. And it reminds us that sometimes the greatest battle we fight is the one against ourselves. You know, this feeling isn't just confined to ancient battlefields. It's a fundamentally human experience, isn't it? It's that internal panic that can cloud our judgment when we're facing a tight deadline or a difficult conversation or really any high-pressure situation where we feel completely outnumbered. So how might you actually hear this idiom in modern life? Well, you could gently say it to a friend who's overthinking a small problem, reminding them, don't be so paranoid. Or you might think of it when a colleague is panicking after a minor setback at work, seeing threats in every single email. It's really just a way to describe that state of being overly jumpy and anxious. Learn Chinese one story at a time.